Wow. I think it's fair to say that a lot of things do change in 1 year's time. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. My name's Zerkadowski here of wearechange.org, and we have a lot of absolutely crazy and wild news to get into, as of course we will talk about domestic news a little bit, but predominantly focus on the political downturn of the Ron DeSantis presidential campaign, which is something that is bewildering. It's strange. Is it a conspiracy against him or for him? What's really going on here? How did this happen so quickly? How do you quantify? What do you blame for the downfall of this politician? Well, we're going to be talking about that plus a lot more all here on this independent media broadcast. If you like the shirt that I'm wearing, you could get it on thebestpoliticalshirts.com. And the clip that we played in the beginning of this broadcast was made by @_JohnnyMaga on Twitter. If he has a YouTube channel, we, of course, will be linking that down in the description below, as, of course, his combination of these two clips from a year ago to today are very jarring, to say the least, and definitely do tell a very interesting story that we're going to be expanding upon here in this broadcast. As of course, it's fair to say that things in the United States aren't doing that well, specifically in the Hawaiian islands of Maui, where American citizens have suffered huge, tremendous loss of life and property, as the President of the United States has yet to even address or talk about the mounting death toll and catastrophic wildfire disaster that has left a huge portion of Hawaii in ruins, while the United States just announced another $200 million in aid to Ukraine in order to prolong that larger proxy conflict and war in Europe. All of this is happening as American businesses and storefronts are being shuttered and destroyed, particularly in San Francisco, where someone recently also made a compilation video highlighting the mass exodus of huge brands and businesses that, of course, cannot operate under the failed Democratic leadership that is also represented in the executive office of the United States. You add that to all the racial tensions here in the United States, and I think it's fair to say that the American people want a new change in leadership, and that the prospects of a Biden 2024 presidency is very unlikely, highlighting the very strong likelihood that his political opponent will probably be the next president of the United States, as things aren't going that well for the American people. Now, many people expected that person to be Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, and it's important to note here that those prospects were very high a year ago and have been continuing to, of course, diminish every single day. This, as the latest video that we're seeing today, is Ron DeSantis walking in Iowa with people chanting to him that they love the former president of the United States.
Trump! We love 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 Trump! We want Trump!
This, as Newsweek today is reporting that Ron DeSantis is getting brutal news from a GOP strategist that is detailing how support for the 2024 presidential candidate is dwindling, that, quote, in such a way that even conservative focus groups are no longer mentioning him, as it was just a couple months ago that, according to many polls, Ron DeSantis was actually leading in the numbers against the former president of the United States and even showing favorability of beating Joe Biden. Those numbers are actually inversed today, showing you just how quickly things could change in politics, as of course the latest poll numbers are showing that the former president of the United States is absolutely dominating and crushing the competition in a very substantial way, with Ron DeSantis continuing to be in second place and plummeting in the official poll numbers, as Reuters is even talking about Trump's coronation for the 2024 presidential election, as he is even saying that he might not even attend the debates that are happening between the other Republican presidential candidates, as of course he has already been seen as a favorite by many. As of course it's important to note here that a couple months ago, that wasn't the situation at all. as Donald Trump had a mediocre midterm election result with his endorsements. Even other online commentators like Tim Pool were complaining that he just kept talking about old issues surrounding the 2020 presidential elections and not actual current issues. He was also going on stage and telling his supporters to not only get the third, but the fourth shot of something that he was calling the Trump scene. And with his poll numbers dwindling, with comments that he was making against his viewer base for Big Pharma, it's also important to note here that the story of Ron DeSantis' downfall is correlated to the rallying that Donald Trump did by being able to win hearts and minds of his supporters that, of course, are now rallying behind him more than anyone else. Now, why are they rallying behind him? Well, it's important to note here that it's also the political prosecution of Donald Trump by state and federal authorities that have boosted him up in the poll numbers and have galvanized a lot of very prominent political activists and media spokespeople to, of course, fully support him in the face of what many people call clearly political prosecution. And with every indictment and every disingenuous gaffe by Ron DeSantis, the poll numbers kept changing and changing. But just a few months ago, those poll numbers were still high when Ron DeSantis was refusing to attack or even address the former president of the United States, as Ron DeSantis' favorability numbers were very high when, of course, he was not directly attacking the former president of the United States. Now, it's also important to note here that the former president of the United States and a lot of his chief allies were attacking Ron DeSantis very significantly. There was a lot of particularly salacious memes and Photoshop images being made here, as even the former president of the United States went on Truth Social and made allegations and alluded to the fact that somehow Ron DeSantis was involved with some kind of nefarious activities with teenagers, which he was allegedly caught drinking with. And factually speaking here, it is fair to say that the former president of the United States was making the first jabs against Ron DeSantis here, who was saying that he was just doing a book tour all around some of the key states that, of course, he later was campaigning in. A lot of people didn't like that disingenuousness, as it's important to note here that very key prominent figures like Elon Musk and Tucker Carlson were still supporting and speaking very favorably of Ron DeSantis to their particular audiences, as even CNN News was talking about the DeSantis-Elon Musk alliance that was a, quote, year in the making. And so far, everything looked good for the newly elected governor of Florida that decisively won in a purple state that he turned convincingly very red, even in the jurisdiction of Miami, Florida. Now, everything at that time looked pretty good for Ron DeSantis. He was getting a lot of support. He was very high in the poll numbers. A lot of people were expecting a lot from him, especially with the stark difference that Ron DeSantis had between Donald Trump and, of course, the last 3 years of lockdowns, Operation Warp Speed, and Dr. Fauci, who was allowed to do whatever he wanted to under the leadership of the former president of the United States. So far, everything looked peachy and great, until during the peak of the indictment news surrounding the former president of the United States, Donald Trump, during the peak attention span and rallying call behind the former president of the United States, Ron DeSantis decided to finally address and make a dig and start to politically punch back against Donald Trump, which didn't really work out well. And politically talking here definitely wasn't the right strategic move to make here, as of course you have the state, you have the federal government, you have local states conspiring to take down one of the main political opposition parties, and in doing so, by officially indicting them and putting him in court and bogging him down and trying to take money away from him, this was the least opportune time to politically say anything negative against Donald Trump, which Ron DeSantis decided to do at that very key specific moment, which made many people think that, of course, he was just landing a cheap shot on one of his political opponents that was already down, as Ron DeSantis, in an official statement, decided that he does not know anything about giving porn stars hush money. A comment made in the face of political prosecution that left a really bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, showing that he is siding with the establishment here rather than someone in his own political party that is being prosecuted and punished. Now, that wasn't the only gaffe that, of course, hurt Ron DeSantis. Particularly, one of the things that made me very skeptical of the Florida governor was particularly his foreign policy stance, which he described to Tucker Carlson when Tucker Carlson asked all the presidential candidates about what they would do about the current situation in Ukraine. And in response to that, we got kind of a bland, mediocre, middle of the road that could be interpreted in many different ways, kind of political statement from Ron DeSantis that said very little by saying a lot. Now, what exactly did it mean? A lot of this could have been just political mumbo jumbo, but clearly showed that he wasn't really strong on either side of this issue. A key moment, an opportune time for the former president of the United States, Donald Trump, that took this situation, took the bull by the horns, and decided to be very staunchly anti-war and promised to, of course, end this conflict in a matter of hours. An approach that, of course, was starkly different than Ron DeSantis and almost every other presidential candidate in the Republican sphere, and highlighted a very big popular demand and sentiment that, of course, voters really love. That's why we keep voting in people who promise to not launch new wars, and somehow almost every single time there's some kind of new conflict, new wars, new drone strikes that are launched by the same presidential candidates that promised us that they would be non-interventionist. Now, very interestingly, Ron DeSantis even was criticized for his middle-of-the-road statements on Ukraine. He then backtracked on it, which showed he didn't really have a strong backbone, as, of course, he then toted the establishment lines, saying Putin bad, Putin must go. And 4 months later, during, of course, another forum hosted by Tucker Carlson about this issue, he offered, quote, up another word salad, according to Yahoo News, and I would definitely agree with him, as his foreign policy is still a mystery. While Donald Trump keeps promising to end the wars, this guy just keeps talking on and on about statements that could be interpreted in many different ways. What's the actual policy? What's actually going on here? Who knows? And personally, this saga made me really distrust the governor of Florida. You add that to the fact of the DeSantis campaign also using artificial intelligence fake images in order to attack Donald Trump. You add that to, of course, the failed campaign launch that happened on a Twitter space that was filled with glitches, echoes, melting servers, and, of course, a low-energy Ron DeSantis that talked in a melancholy-like way and didn't really bring a lot of enthusiasm to the launch of his official presidential campaign, even though he was with Elon Musk and had an opportune time to do something new, something innovative, but left everyone asking what the hell was going on here. This, as of course his campaign staff had had a lot of controversy within it. A lot of prominent staff members were fired, as Bloomberg is reporting that his political coffers are still being amassed by Wall Street insiders and, of course, big money individuals that are pouring a lot of funds into his campaign that's not really doing too well. Now, whatever you might think about Donald Trump, even though he does also take a lot of big money from a lot of bad interests, it is fair to say that Donald Trump clearly has all the momentum, all the power right now to be, of course, the main GOP Republican presidential candidate for the 2024 presidential election, facing off against Joe Biden, the current president of the United States, doing another repeat of the 2020 presidential elections if the establishment doesn't have any other ideas, as, of course, Ron DeSantis and the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, have preliminarily agreed towards a debate on Fox News that some say might shake up the political theater. This as we're also finding out that the debate has been stalled, as of course the two can't agree to terms when it comes to this debate and how it will be handled. Now, is Ron DeSantis someone that you could write off now? Well, according to some news headlines, no. But with Donald Trump being the clear front runner here, it is important to note here that things, especially when it comes to presidential elections, change very fast and dramatically. As of course, it's important to note here that many people saw Hillary Clinton, who had a decisive lead against Barack Obama in 2007 as the next president of the United States. She was leading the polls around this time, absolutely dominating the competition, and then crooked Hillary in 2008 lost that nomination and clearly was never president of the United States. We still have about 150 days before the first primary here in the United States. Will there be any kind of shakeups here? Will the establishment try to stop Donald Trump even more? And if they do, they probably will prop him up even more. Honestly speaking, as this larger political shift within a couple months has even had some conspiracy theorists come out and speculate that maybe it wasn't just the political failure of Ron DeSantis, but maybe there was even a conspiracy within a conspiracy to, of course, internally shut him down from becoming the next president of the United States. Was he sabotaged? Was his campaign just kneecapped? Well, with how bad things are going for him politically, that's an assessment that some people are actually thinking about as credible. Now, with Ron DeSantis having more gaffes and not even doing interviews or any kind of media pieces with independent journalism, with him pretty much being absent along with his staff from the Twitterverse, with him not having any kind of grassroots support of actual individuals, with him not coming to debates, not coming to conversations, shying away from them from my analysis and perspective. Will there be a turnaround for Ron DeSantis? Is there a conspiracy against him? Well, what do you think is going on here? Let me know down in the comment section below, as of course we're going to be expanding on this theory and other theories on LukeUnfiltered.com, and we're going to have another video available for members right after this video. So as soon as we're done here, we're going to have another video talking about a lot of other issues that we can't talk about here on this particular broadcast, all on LukeUnfiltered.com, where we go down the rabbit hole. That video available for you right now, along with other key benefits, perks as members. We're also going to be doing another meetup in Milwaukee next week, Tuesday, 6 p.m., right near the presidential debates, which we will be attending as well. So stay tuned for a lot of incredible coverage. We're probably going to be going live from those particular events. We're going to have more behind-the-scenes reports for you. Lots of incredible stuff, all available to you now on LukeUnfiltered.com, and I will see you there right after this broadcast. Looking forward to your comments. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you actively sharing and watching this video. I hope I was able to explain what's happening and the history of it, and if you thought I did a good job at that, share this video with your friends and family members. I love you guys. Stay tuned for more here on wearechange.org.